Every day, thousands of people go missing. Most leave behind a trail, a dropped phone, a frantic text, a car abandoned on the side of the highway. But what if the person who disappeared didn't leave their life? What if they left their face? This is the story of Ethan, a 23-year-old digital artist who specialized in creating photorealistic portraits of people who don't exist. He thought his talent was just a product of a powerful imagination and a high-end graphics tablet. Until the day he drew a face from memory and received a FaceTime call from the exact same person he just invented. A person who was currently standing inside Ethan's locked apartment. Ethan lived for the screen. He was a freelancer, working out of a dark, cramped loft that was perpetually lit by the neon blue glow of his dual monitors. His niche was uncanny realism. He would spend 14 hours a day meticulously painting pores, iris patterns, and individual strands of hair, creating digital humans so flawless they looked alive. He called it a hobby, but deep down, it was an obsession. He felt more comfortable with his digital ghosts than with actual human beings. Lately, though, the lines were blurring. Ethan began suffering from severe episodes of sleep paralysis. He would wake up unable to move, staring at a dark silhouette standing at the foot of his bed. When he finally broke free, the figure would be gone, leaving behind a lingering smell of ozone and wet copper. To cope with the anxiety, he channeled the fear into his art. He began a new project, letting his hands move automatically across the tablet, drawing the face of the entity from his nightmares. For 3 days straight, he didn't sleep. He painted with a frantic, feverish energy. He drew a sharp, asymmetric jawline, piercing, deep-set gray eyes, a thin, jagged scar cutting through the left eyebrow. It was a striking, beautiful, yet deeply unsettling face. He hit save on the final render at 4:11 a.m. He titled the file, "The Stranger." Ethan collapsed into his chair, rubbing his bloodshot eyes. He stared at the finished image on his 4K monitor. The digital man looked like he was about to breathe. The realism was terrifying. Suddenly, the screen glitched. The drawing blinked. Ethan scrambled backward, knocking over his coffee mug. He blinked hard, thinking his sleep-deprived mind was playing tricks on him. The image was static again. He forced a laugh, cursing his lack of sleep. But then, his phone, sitting right next to the keyboard, began to vibrate violently. The screen lit up with an incoming FaceTime call. There was no phone number, no caller ID, just a blank, black silhouette where the contact photo should be. Ethan picked it up, his thumb hovering over the green button. Against his better judgment, curiosity won. He slid to answer. The video connected. The camera on the other end was pitch black. For 5 seconds, there was only the sound of heavy, rhythmic breathing. Then, a lighter flickered on. The flame illuminated a face, sharp, asymmetric jawline, deep-set gray eyes, a thin, jagged scar cutting through the left eyebrow. It was the stranger. The exact digital portrait Ethan had just spent 72 hours inventing from thin air. Ethan's phone slipped from his hand, clattering onto the desk. The voice from the speaker was hollow, echoing with a strange metallic resonance. "Thank you for the upgrade, Ethan. The old skin was getting tight." Ethan grabbed his phone, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. "Who is this? How did you modify my render? Is this a deepfake?" He screamed into the microphone. The man on the screen didn't smile. He just moved the lighter closer to his face. Ethan could see the texture of the skin. It didn't look like flesh. It looked like stretched plastic, shifting and warping awkwardly over the cheekbones, as if it didn't quite fit the skull underneath. "Look out your window," the man whispered. Ethan froze. His desk faced the wall, but his loft had a single, large panoramic window overlooking the alleyway behind the building. He slowly turned his head. Down in the alley, under the flickering buzz of a broken street lamp, stood a man in a heavy black trench coat. He was holding a phone up to his ear. The neon light caught his face. It was him. But as Ethan watched, the man in the alleyway didn't just stand there. He looked up, locked his gray eyes directly onto Ethan's third-story window, and began to walk toward the building's back entrance. Ethan slammed the call disconnect button. He ran to his front door, throwing every heavy deadbolt into place and sliding the security chain across the frame. He grabbed a heavy metal baseball bat from his closet, his hands slick with sweat. His phone buzzed again. A text message from the unknown number. It was a photo. It was a picture of the building's fuse box in the basement. The heavy copper wires had been cleanly severed. Instantly, the electricity in Ethan's apartment died. The glowing monitors, the ambient LEDs, the refrigerator hum, everything vanished into pitch-black, suffocating darkness. The only light came from the dim gray moonlight filtering through the rain-streaked window. A heavy, metallic thud echoed from the hallway. Thud, thud, thud. Something was dragging itself up the stairs. It didn't move like a normal human. The footsteps were uneven, heavy, and mechanical. Ethan hid behind his kitchen island, gripping the baseball bat so tightly his knuckles turned white. He checked his phone. No service. The signal bars were completely gone. The heavy footsteps stopped right outside his door. Silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then, the sound of metal scraping against wood. Someone was sliding something under the door. Ethan watched in horror as a thin, white piece of paper slid across the floor, catching the gray moonlight. He crawled forward, his breath shallow, and picked it up. It was a printed copy of an old newspaper article from 10 years ago. The headline read, "Local boy, 13, survives coma after severe neurological trauma, says he forgot his own face." Below the headline was a childhood photograph of the boy. It was Ethan. Ethan stared at the paper, his mind fracturing. He didn't remember a coma. He didn't remember an accident. His parents had always told him he was just a quiet kid who loved to draw. But as he looked at the photo, he realized something even more terrifying. The childhood version of him in the newspaper had completely different facial features. A different nose, different eyes, a different structure. The doorknob began to rattle. Slowly at first, then violently, shaking the entire wooden frame. "You didn't invent me, Ethan." The voice boomed from the other side of the door, loud and clear, echoing through the empty apartment. "You remembered me. I was the face you had before the accident. I am the real Ethan. You are just the digital backup they downloaded into this artificial shell." The wood around the deadbolt began to splinter. The door was buckling under immense, unnatural pressure. Ethan stood up, backing away into the center of the room. "No, I'm real. I have memories. I have a life," he screamed, tears blurring his vision. The door burst open with a deafening crack. Standing in the threshold was the silhouette. The gray moonlight hit his face. The skin was tearing at the edges of the jawline, revealing a glowing algorithmic matrix of blue light underneath. He wasn't a man. He was a living piece of corrupted code, a physical manifestation of a deleted past, coming to reclaim his hardware. The stranger stepped into the room, moving with blinding speed. Before Ethan could swing the bat, a cold metallic hand gripped his throat, lifting him completely off the floor. Ethan thrashed, kicking his legs, his hands clawing at the monster's face. But as his fingers brushed against the stranger's cheek, the skin didn't tear. It began to absorb his fingers. The blue light from the stranger's face began to bleed into Ethan's skin. Ethan looked down at his arms. His flesh was pixelating. His hands were turning into wireframes, breaking apart into millions of tiny, digital glowing particles. The data transfer had begun. He wasn't being killed. He was being overwritten. The stranger looked into Ethan's fading eyes, his voice softening into a terrifyingly familiar tone. "Thank you for taking care of my life. I'll take it from here." Ethan's vision went completely digital, a cascading wall of green and blue code, before snapping into absolute permanent blackness. The next afternoon, the sun washed over the city. Inside the loft, the monitors were back on, glowing brightly. A young man sat in the desk chair, holding a digital pen, smoothly drawing on the tablet. He looked healthy, vibrant, and completely at peace. He paused, looking at his reflection in the dark glass of the monitor. He traced the thin, jagged scar across his left eyebrow and smiled. He opened his email and sent a message to Ethan's biggest client. The message read, "Project finalized. The human element has been completely removed. Ready for deployment."